So for the first one, you have a square root, which is a red light. We do not have a domain of all real numbers whenever you see a square root. So this 2 in front, we can actually disregard. All right, that does not affect your domain. It's what's underneath the square root. This is what controls your domain. So we're going to take that negative 3x minus 4. And you always start off with it greater than or equal to 0. Go ahead and solve this inequality. So we're adding the 4. And because I'm dividing by a negative, we have to flip that inequality. And it becomes negative 4/3. So my domain is x is less than and equal to negative 4/3. So at negative 4/3, we have a closed circle. And I'm going to the left. So when we write interval notation is left to right. So the domain would be negative infinity to negative 4/3 with a bracket. All right, so for my second one, who had that domain? Yes. Uh-huh. No, you don't have to graph it. I'm just doing that because someone who stayed after with me said that it helps when they see the graph. So I thought, well, maybe just do it for everybody so it can help them with interval notation. Yes. Mondays to 3:15-ish. Yes. Oh, okay. So you mean if you wrote your answer like 4 over negative 3? Yeah. That's the same thing. As long as something is negative. Okay. All right. You can put your negative in the front. You can put it in the numerator. You can put it in the denominator.
So I got the same answer, but I still did it like with the 2. Does the 2 change your answer or like?
So you were pretty fortunate that worked out, but you don't have to do that 2. So that 2 in front is not a part of your Radican. It's only what's underneath.
Okay.
Good questions. I love them. I love questions. All right, number 2, we have a quadratic. So we need to factor this down first. So in order to factor that down, we need 2 numbers that would multiply to be negative 4 and add to 3. So what would be my 2 numbers that multiply to give us negative 4 and add to a positive 3? 4 and negative 1, who agrees that those are my numbers? All right, so because those are my numbers, we can just go straight to our parentheses. I have x plus 4 and then x minus 1. So let's set both of these equal to 0. X plus 4 equals 0. X minus 1 equals 0. So that means x cannot equal negative 4. X also cannot equal positive 1. And again, doing the number line is optional. You don't have to do this. So the smallest number is negative 4, so that's going to go to the left, and then 1. So I have 3 pieces of my domain. My first piece is negative infinity to negative 4. The second piece is in between these 2 numbers. And then my third piece is 1 to infinity. So the way we would write that on our test, my domain, parentheses, negative infinity to negative 4, all parentheses, no brackets, because nothing can equal union negative 4 to 1, union 1 to infinity. And that is my domain. Yes?
I thought it would be negative 1. negative infinity, comma 1.
Okay, so you go from left to right. Which number is smaller, 1 or negative 4?
Negative 4.
So that should be on the left.
Okay.
So no, that's why I like to draw the number line, because you can kind of see it visually. So negative 4 is smaller than 1, so negative 4 is on the left. And then it's positive 1. All right, so now we're going to do, we have a long question. I think it has 8 parts to it, which is kind of how homework 6 is set up, but it's short parts. It's not long parts. All right, take a minute and copy down. So I think we're going to use the same function. This is my function. So take a minute and copy this down. And we're going to use this function and put 8 different inputs in. So we have the function f of x equals 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. And we're going to find the following. We have a part A through, I think, H.
Yeah.
Is that how it is on the, yeah.
A through H.
Yeah. So we're just using this one function and we're putting in a lot of different inputs. So the first one is pretty easy, f of 2. Now the main thing I want you to keep in mind is that notice in this function, x actually appears in 2 places. We have it here and here. So every time I put in an input, I'm going to put it in 2 places. And this first spot is squared. Okay. So let's go ahead and work through it. So I have 3 and then x squared. I like to write it with parentheses, and I put a parentheses where there's an x. And the first time we're simply putting in the number 2. So that's the easiest one. Go ahead, do order of operations and see what you get. I believe you get 9. Okay. I'll try to do it without a calculator. Break up my brain. The second time is saying take that same function, so I'm going to rewrite it, and I'm going to put my placeholders. 3x squared, make my parentheses a little bigger this time. And this time, I'm putting in x minus 2. Now, this was the biggest mistake. One of the mistakes that I saw consistently on the first test is when you square something, you cannot just distribute that and say that x minus 2 squared is x squared plus 4. We need to make a box and multiply this out. So let's make our box and multiply x minus 2 times x minus 2. We're always going to follow order of operations. So exponents come before we would multiply. So we also cannot multiply this 3. We have to do our exponent first. So go ahead and fill in all 4 squares. So that would be x squared minus 4x plus 4. And then we have an x minus 2 here. Now you're ready to distribute. So we're multiplying the first parentheses by 3, the second parentheses by negative 2. So go ahead and do that. And then you're going to end by combining your like terms. So there's only one 3x squared or one x squared term. So there's nothing to add that to. And then when we look at our x's, we have a negative 12x and a negative 2x. So that'll be a negative 14x. And then lastly, I have a positive 12, positive 4, and a positive 1. And when we add that together, we get 16, 17. And that would be your final answer. All right, so now keeping with those same two, the same function, 3x squared minus 2x plus 1. The next two things we're going to input are a 2x and an x plus h. So same two functions, now we're putting in two different things. And again, I like to write it with parentheses where I see an x. All right, so we're going to put a 2x in this time. And again, we're following our order of operations. So first we square. What is 2x squared? 2x times 2x. 4x squared, good. And now we're ready to multiply. So my final answer would be 12x squared minus 4x plus 1.
You always have an A, B, and C value?
No. So for D, we won't have that. So for D, we have x plus h. So I'm going to write this out again. And put in our x plus h. All right, make a box. Multiply x plus h times x plus h. So we have 3. So when I multiply x plus h times x plus h, I get x squared. X times h is just hx. And then h times h is h squared. What do you think I'm going to get when I add these two boxes together? 2 what? 2hx, yep. And generally you put them in alphabetical order, but it's not wrong if you put x first. So you could also say 2xh, but h comes first in the alphabet, so I'll put it first. So we have x squared plus 2hx plus h squared. And then in my second parentheses, I have just still the x plus h. Now what do you think we're going to do?
Substitute or multiply?
Not multiply yet, we're going to distribute. So let's multiply the first parentheses by positive 3. The second parentheses we're multiplying by negative 2. So that would be 3x squared plus 6hx plus 3h squared. Now distribute the negative 2. So that'll be negative 2x minus 2h and plus 1. Notice that none of these are like terms. None of these can be combined. So we have a long answer. Okay. Last two. So it's only to F. So let's talk about the difference between these two questions because they look close, they look similar, but they're different. Where I put that negative makes a difference. When I put the negative in front of the function, what this is telling me to do here is just multiply the entire function by negative 1. So you're not doing a substitution. You're flipping the signs. But for the second one, we're actually substituting in a negative x. So that negative is different. Putting a negative in front versus putting a negative inside of the parentheses. That's two different functions. So for part E, all I'm going to do is take my function, which is this right here, and multiply it by negative 1. So negative 1 times 3x squared minus 2x plus 1 gives you a function of negative 3x squared plus 2x minus 1. That is what negative f of x equals. But for part F, I'm going to set it up with my placeholders. And this time I'm putting in my negative x. And we're simplifying it. So negative x times negative x is positive x squared. So this becomes positive 3x squared. The second sign does change to a positive 2x and a plus 1. And that would be your two answers. So what we just did was we evaluated the same function with 6 different inputs. Now there's one more type of question you have in homework 6. We're not going to finish it entirely. You can do the majority of the homework. We're going to finish it all on Monday. But we are going to start adding or doing operations with functions next. So in your notes, go ahead, draw a line. We're going to talk about operations with functions. And you don't need to copy this down here because this is pretty much, things you know. So if you see a plus sign, we know that that's adding. If you see a minus sign, that means we're subtracting. If you see a multiplication sign between the two functions, that means we're multiplying them. And division. We're going to talk about adding and subtracting today, and then Monday we'll finish out with multiplication and division. So the main thing you want to do is title your notes, operation with functions. And we're using the same two functions, and we're going to do all 4 operations. So today we'll do adding and subtracting, and then we'll finish out Monday with multiplication and division. So we have 2 functions here. We have f of x equals 2x plus 1. And we have g of x equals x minus 3. We're going to take these 2 functions and do all 4 operations with them. So the first operation we're going to do is addition. So let's go ahead and add these 2 together. So I'm going to add f of x plus g of x, which would be 2x plus 1 plus x minus 3. Go ahead and combine your like terms, and that would be your function. That's it. That is your f plus g of x. Now I want to do b a little differently. There's 2 different ways we can find b. But I'm going to show you both ways. One way, only because I know this function, I know what f plus g of x gives me. I know that I get this. One way would be to just put the 3 in here and get f plus g of 3. But I don't want to do it that way because on the test, we may ask you to find something without knowing the function. So another way to do that is if I'm asked to find f plus g of 3, is to find f of 3 and add that to g of 3. So take 3 and input it into both of these functions separately, and then add those 2 numbers together. So go ahead and do that. Put your 3 in your f function, put a 3 in the g function, and then add those 2 answers together. So that would be 7 plus 0, which gives us an answer of 7. And as you can see, we would also get 7 if I use my f plus g function. If I put my 3 in here, I would have 3 times 3 minus 2, which is 9 minus 2, which is also 7. So there's 2 different ways to arrive at that 7. All right, we'll do one more question and then we'll end there. Let's subtract, and then I'll show you your test, and we can talk about corrections and retakes. So same 2 functions. We're still using f of x is 2x plus 1, and g of x is x minus 3. This time we're going to subtract them though. So we're taking f of x minus g of x. So that would be 2x plus 1 minus. Now, whenever you do subtraction though, I recommend that you put it in parentheses. And you're going to distribute the negative and then combine your like terms. So you have 2x plus 1 minus x plus 3. Go ahead and combine your like terms. And that gives you x plus 4. All right, anybody else get x plus 4? We got that? Okay. All right, so now for part D, we could do that 2 different ways. Again, I'm going to show both. But essentially, you're taking f of 4 minus g of 4. So f of 4 would be 2 times 4 plus 1. And then I'm going to subtract. So this is a number. We need to figure out what we get there. And then subtract from that 4 minus 3, which is also a number. So you're finding out 2 different numbers, and now you're subtracting them. So this first one would be 9 minus 1, which is 8. And that's what we would get if I use this function and I put my 4 in. I would get 4 plus 4, which is also 8. So 2 different ways to get the 8. And on the test, I don't care which way you do it. So we start off this unit with a quiz. That quiz is in a little less than 2 weeks, like a week and a half. And then we have our test.